A lot of people have feelings about the Mark Gastineau-Brett Favre confrontation. It's a 30 for 30 on the mothership. It's the New York Sack Exchange. Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback, senior NFL reporter. He's at the league meetings in Irving, Texas. Let me ask you about that Gastineau-Brett Favre confrontation. Go back to 2002 when it happened. I don't know how big of a deal it was when, Favre gift wrapped that sack for Michael Strahan.
I think everybody sort of saw it as a cute thing, if I remember right? Like, I was just out of college, and I definitely remember everybody laughing about it after, like I never thought somebody take such offense to it. And then for Brett to come out and apologize the way that he did on Twitter, and like putting like real life context on it, you know what I mean? And like saying like how it actually might have cost Gastineau money. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. It was weird because like I don't know if you got this feeling watching it, Dan, but like when I saw it, like at first, like Favre had that look on his face, like he thought he was joking, and then like slowly started to realize like, no, this guy's actually serious about this, which I think everybody who watched it thought like, okay, like is he gonna at some point here kind of like let his guard down and just say, I'm just messing around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just a weird confrontation.
Okay, what if whoever the Eagles play at the end of the season and Saquon Barkley has a chance to break Eric Dickerson's all-time record?
Yep.
And all of a sudden they let him have his 7-yard run.
Yeah.
Anybody going to have a problem with that?
I mean, I don't think any of the current players will, I mean, maybe I wouldn't have said Eric Dickerson would, but like maybe he will.
I would. If I'm Eric Dickerson, I'd be like, wait, you're just going to let him run and break my record? It's trying to understand what these records mean to these players.
What I think the other thing is too, that's sort of interesting about it is like how all these guys are friends now. And it's been that way for a long time. It's not like that's new. You know what I mean? Like, but I do think like, the athletes from my childhood, like, for me, like the one I remember is like all the basketball rivalries, how those teams genuinely seem to hate each other.
Yeah.
The Pistons and the Celtics and the Bulls and the Lakers, like they genuinely seem to not like each other. And at some point along the line that changed. And I think, I don't know, like, what do you think? You got a better handle on this than me, probably like late 90s, maybe somewhere in there. Like it started to be like these guys all had the same agents or the same.
Well, I think Magic and Isaiah. I think that changed. When you give each other a kiss on the cheek for a jump ball and you're playing in an NBA Finals, you got my attention there of, okay, maybe it's not the Bulls-Pistons rivalry. And it felt like there was it was okay to be friends with somebody even though you wanted to beat them.
Right. So like, I think that's sort of, I think that's probably the divide here too, right? Like is like that, like to use your example, like no one in 1984 was giving Eric Dickerson those 7 yards. No one was giving Mark Gastineau the extra sack, And I mean, Favre and Strahan, everybody knew like how friendly those two were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So could I see, and I'd have to look up who the Eagles are playing in week 18. I don't have it right in front of me, but could I see, I don't know, like a defensive coach who knows Saquon saying like, yeah, we'll cook this one for you a little bit. Certainly that could happen. Like that's, I think it's just like sort of a change in the relationship between players on different teams over the last 30 or 40 years.
All right. Help me understand Chapel Bill here with North Carolina. Like
I haven't heard that one. That's pretty good.
Yeah. What do we, what's holding this up?
I think money right now is a factor. Like how much you're going to pay him, how much you're going to resource the program. What you're going to be able to give him from an NIL standpoint, all of that. Like I also like in the back of my head, because I had a feeling like something could happen last night, and now this is starting to drag out a little bit. So, there's always that in the back of your head. Like, is he just making sure before he does something that like some NFL team isn't going to call and say like, well, wait a minute, Bill. Like maybe we can't guarantee you anything, but might want to wait a few weeks here. You know what I mean? Like, could that happen? I think that's certainly possible too, because I think his preference probably still is to stay in the NFL.
But I thought that this was basically the NFL saying, Bill, we don't want you.
No, I would say here's the way I would look at it. Like I think the simplest, most compact way to explain it is Bill was stunned by the lack of interest last year, right? Like so you had six jobs open, not including New England, which obviously was the one that let him go. And he only got interest really from one team. And then the bureaucracy of that team got in the way of him getting that job. And so now, after a year, he's got the 30,000-foot view of the league. He's gotten to see it the way a lot of these teams operate. Take a closer look at like how each team is affected by all the factors inside their organizations. And he's looking at the jobs that are open, and it's like, okay, like so if I go to Chicago, I got to work for Kevin Warren and with Ryan Poles. If I go to the Jets, I've got to work with Woody Johnson. And I think it's like sort of this calculus of like every team's not going to want me because that's the way it was last year. And of the ones that do want me, am I going to want them? You know, is that path to the right job going to be there for me? And can I count on that? And I think Bill badly wants to coach next year. And so, I think he sees that it's like sort of a narrow path to the perfect situation where things are set up exactly the way that he wants it with an NFL team. Meanwhile, I think, over the last 2, 3 months, he and the people around him have done a lot of research on college jobs and what those look like. And I think what they found is that it's closer to the NFL than it ever has been before. The challenges are, and they may have an advantage because NIL is salary cap, because transfer portal is free agency, and because you might be able to get things up and running faster. I've heard a lot of people make the recruiting argument, right, Dan? Like I'm sure you've heard that, right? Like, does he want to go into an 18-year-old's house and recruit? Do you know how many of those visits Deion Sanders
They
has
don't
made?
do that. They don't.
Zero.
Yes, they
Zero.
don't do that. All of a sudden,
Yeah,
you
so
go,
like,
Mom and Dad, Bill Belichick's on a Zoom call. Hey,
right.
Tommy, just want to say, come on in. Who's more likely to coach in the NFL, Deion or Belichick next season?
I think Belichick. I think Deion. I think Deion will be back at Colorado next year, unless like Florida State comes open. But I think Deion probably be back at Colorado next year. Bill. I think he could do a deal with North Carolina today. I think he could pull out of that today. I think that all things are sort of on the table today. I think all things are on the table. I think his preference is to coach in the NFL, but like I don't think he wants to put it this way. I don't think he wants to walk into a bleep show where he doesn't think he's got a great chance to win and suffer the indignity of being 15 wins away from Don Shula and not being able to get there because of the environment that he's working in. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So I think he wants Shula's record. He's a historian of the game. I think it's BS that I think he wants the record.
Yeah, but the reason why there's an opening is because that team has been a bleep show. Like he goes into Jacksonville,
which I think is what I think that's what he's starting to realize.
Yes,
but I'm not saying like a bleep show. Like, is it a bleep show that's going to remain a bleep show after? Like, are the reasons for it being a bleep show still in place when you're walking in, or are you going to have the opportunity to clean it up? You know what I'm saying?
Like, and thank you for saying bleep show. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
cleaning it up.
He may have if he goes into a place where it's like we're clearing the decks for you, Bill. And it was a bleep show, but we're going to give you every resource to fix it. Versus like another place where maybe some of the people who are responsible for the bleep show are still going to be part of football decisions. Those are two very different things.
Talking to Albert Breer, Monday Morning quarterback, senior NFL reporter. Do the Vikings have a dilemma at quarterback?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it a good dilemma?
It's a champagne problem. There's a Dom Perignon problem. Look, like I think we need to stop it with like expecting the other shoe to drop with Sam Darnold. He's just a really good player, who was in a bad situation. We saw Geno Smith and the renaissance of his career in Seattle. It'd be hard for any quarterback to overcome some of the things that Geno and Sam went through over that period of time in New York. And I think, what you're seeing is the nature versus nurture thing play out in real time. And, it's 11 games, I believe, where he's had a triple-digit passer rating. That's a franchise record. He had the highest passer rating in the history of the franchise on Sunday. Yes, part of it's that he's thrown to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, but part of it's that he's becoming a really good player, and he's with a coach that's built an offense that works for him. And Kevin O'Connell deserves a ton of credit. So I think what's tricky about this one is they love where J.J. McCarthy was, Dan, in August when he got hurt. So, and they really believe in him. The problem is that you like now, like it's just as far as where he's going to be in May, in June, in July, like you're projecting. You haven't gotten to see the development on the bench over September and October and November and December. And so you are to some degree projecting where he's going to be. And when you've got a team that's clearly in a window where it can win right now, do you owe it to the veteran players to at least give yourself the insurance policy of bringing Sam Darnold back for a year on the franchise tag? Or do you look at it and say, we believe enough in JJ McCarthy that this is going to work out. We believe that we're going to be able to get him up and running the same way we were able to get Sam Darnold up and running. And we love Sam Darnold, but we want to have the advantage of having the quarterback on the rookie contract. So love you, Sam. Rooting for you. Go find another team to play for. It's an interesting question, and I do think the franchise tag it's going to be over $40 million for quarterbacks this year. So like, are you willing to pay a $40 million tab to make sure that you're buttoned up at the most important position on the field with a team that's ready to contend in the here and the now?
The Eagles situation.
Yep.
Is there something there? Is this, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown? I mean, is this a big deal?
Yeah, I just think, look, like, I think Jalen Hurts is a warrior of a football player, and he brings a lot to the table. Is he going to be like sort of the den leader for the offense? No. And, I think his personality is such where he's not the warmest person in the world, so I don't think he's the guy who is going to stand there and put his arm around A.J. Brown and say, don't worry about it, buddy. We'll get you next time, And I think like the way that Jalen carries himself, and again, he's not a bad guy, but I do think it wears on people sometimes. And I think it's worn on people who've been around him. And, so he and AJ had a really close relationship, but having a close relationship when you're on different teams and you see each other once in a while is different than having a close relationship when you're around the guy every day. And so I think it's something that can be worked out because they've got a head coach in Nick Sirianni who's very emotionally intelligent, I would say, and like really has the ability to manage people. And so I think they're going to work it out the same way they've worked a lot of things out there over the last year to get to the point where they're, now 11-2 and one of the best teams in football. But it's not nothing.
Safe travels, Albert. Always great to talk to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
That's Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback. It is interesting that, Belichick could take the job or turn down the job. I don't think anybody would be surprised at this point if he did either one of those.